Hey guys, tonight we take a slow cobblestoned walk into the distant past, where your job is simple, your outfit is flamboyant, and your most important tool is a brass bell. You're standing under a slate-coloured sky, your boots already soaked from the morning dew, and in your gloved hand is a rolled-up proclamation you'll be shouting in about 7 minutes. You're the town crier now, a profession so historic it predates most of what people think of as history. You've got a voice like a trumpet and ankles permanently damp. You'll wander narrow lanes, announce royal edicts, lost goats, public punishments, and maybe even someone's birthday. And though you look like a cross between a marching band and a tapestry, you're actually a vital thread in a fragile medieval information network. Oh, and, small detail, you probably won't survive this century. Bubonic plague, local sword accidents, or just slipping on some poorly placed sheep dung. Tough gig. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing our sleepy little community spread across the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the muddy lane just as the bells of the chapel begin their low, sleepy chime. It's too early for anyone respectable to be awake, but you're not in the business of timing things around respectability. Your feet squelch in the half-frozen soil as you clear your throat and glance at the official parchment in your other hand. The ink is still a little smudged. It was rushed, like most things that come directly from the crown. The village is still yawning into its chimneys. You see thin fingers of smoke curling from thatched roofs, hear the faint clatter of a bucket being drawn from a well. A chicken regards you with what could be admiration or possibly suspicion. You're used to being both feared and ignored. The bell in your hand is an extension of your personality now. Heavy, brassy, dented from a brief run-in with a disgruntled blacksmith who did not appreciate you announcing his public fine for inappropriate sawing. When you ring it, people know you mean business, or at least they know to open their shutters. Oyez, oyez, oyez. The words ring out across the square. It's not hear ye yet, that's a later evolution. Right now, oyez is Norman French, meaning listen up, and you've said it 3 times to hammer it home. Your breath comes in puffs in the cold, your voice bounces off timbered facades, and the dogs begin barking. Good, that means they heard you. The announcement today is routine. New rules about market stall placement, something about not blocking the alehouse entrance again, and a reminder that pigs must be kept on leashes within town limits. Yes, you really just shouted about pig leashes, and you did it with pride. Town criers were expected to read clearly, project loudly, and do so without editorializing, no matter how ridiculous the content. Historians still argue whether criers occasionally accidentally misread unpopular laws to soften their impact, or if that's just romantic speculation by people who've never tried reading by candlelight in the rain. You finish the proclamation with the usual flourish, a quick roll of the scroll, a tip of the feathered hat to a passing milkmaid who is pretending very hard not to look at you, and another clang of the bell. The dogs, mercifully, stop barking. You nod to yourself. That's stop 1 of 15 today. As you move on, your boots catching on loose cobbles, you consider how oddly prestigious your role is. You don't just relay information, you are the information. In a world where most people can't read and printed materials are rarer than chickens that lay golden eggs, your voice is the loudest and therefore the truest thing many people will hear all day. The prestige comes with quirks. You eat free at most inns. You can interrupt basically anyone, and your words, once cried, are considered officially delivered, even if the person you're announcing it to was 6 feet underground at the time. The legal system is still catching up. You pass the baker, who's wiping his hands on a flowery apron and offering you a burnt end of something vaguely edible. You take it, because the town doesn't pay you in gold. It pays you in crusts and privilege, and sometimes a chicken named Ethel. A woman nods from her doorway, hair in curlers, clearly amused. Another pig leash day? She calls softly. You raise the bell in a sort of salute. Same pig, new leash. And you trudge on. As the sun starts to properly show itself, dribbling golden syrup down over the frosted rooftops, the town stirs a little more. Children begin chasing one another with sticks. A cart clatters over uneven stones. You pass a man attempting to sweep the front of his shop using a bundle of what looks like stolen goose feathers. Your job isn't glamorous. Your outfit is, but that's mostly distraction. You're tired, your throat aches most mornings, and you haven't had a dry sock since Michaelmas. But you know every alley in this town. You know who's expecting a baby, who's due for a fine, and who's been secretly moving their stall 3 inches closer to the alehouse for 3 weeks now. You are, in many ways, the town's memory. You ring your bell again, shout about next week's livestock auction, and prepare for another long day of announcements, hecklers, and chickens with vendettas. You reach the end of the lane, where the stones give way to a rutted path of trodden earth and wagon grooves. There's a patch of green here, muddy, sure, but still technically green, where sheep sometimes wander, and where the children of the town conduct highly organized games involving sticks, shouts, and improvised rules that change mid-play. It's your next post, and you pause to clear your throat before delivering your next round of proclamations. But before you shout anything else, let's pause for a sleepy moment and ask, what even is a town crier? To modern ears, the term probably conjures someone in frilly garb yelling, "Hear ye!" in an overly dramatic voice, maybe while declaring something vaguely royal or very irrelevant. But in your case, it's quite a serious full-time job, a centuries-long tradition where you are not just a herald but also a messenger, a performer, a voice of the law, and on occasion, a scapegoat with nice shoes. The origin of your role goes back well before most people think. In England, town criers became formalised in the 13th and 14th centuries, particularly during the reign of Edward III. Before that, messages were often passed by word of mouth, which, as any child who's played a game of telephone can tell you, was not ideal for royal decrees or taxation reminders. So the Crown needed a way to ensure its words were heard loud and clear, unchanged, and legally binding. That's where you came in. You're not just shouting for fun, you're shouting with purpose. When you bellow out a proclamation, it becomes law the moment it leaves your mouth. That's why your voice has to carry, your stance has to look confident. Even if you're announcing something absurd, like the Lord Mayor wishes to remind all citizens that public geese are not for riding. And because most people can't read, your words are everything. You're the pipeline through which knowledge flows. If you get it wrong, or worse, forget a line, the whole system buckles. One time, old Thomas forgot to read the last part of the harvest tax announcement and caused a bread riot. He's still not allowed near the Flower Guild. Now, you might assume town criers were only found in England, but variations of the role appeared all over the world. From Greek kerix shouting news at the agora to West African griots who recited oral histories and messages to their communities, the role of human broadcaster has a long echoing past. But what makes the English version special is its near-obsessive formalization. Everything about your work is defined by custom, uniform, and ritual. You don't just cry news, you perform it. Wrapped in embroidery and echo, the town takes you seriously, or at least they pretend to. You hold a scroll, not because it's easier than memorizing, but because it looks official. You ring a bell not just for volume, but to signal your authority. And you always begin with Oyez, to anchor your words in legal importance. Skipping it would be like starting a letter without dear. You glance at the scroll in your hand, smoothed over your thigh to flatten the fold. Today's message includes notice of a minor bridge repair. Someone fell in last week and is still a bit damp, plus a reminder to the alehouse that their license is due for renewal. You're tempted to mumble that last one, as the alehouse tends to forget your tab when you read bad news too clearly. You ring the bell. Oyez, oyez, oyez! Be it known to all residents. A dog barks once. A woman opens a shutter and leans her elbows on the ledge. She's got her hair in rags and a steaming mug in her hand. The mug reads something you can't make out. It might be Latin or just a smear of glaze. Behind her, a baby cries. Or maybe it's a goat. Hard to tell some mornings. You finish the announcement with practiced flair and lower your arm. There's a pause in the air, a tiny hush, like the town inhaling. Then it exhales again. People go back to what they were doing. Laundry is hung. Hooves clatter. The world resumes. That's the thing about being a crier. Your words are heavy with meaning, but they vanish the moment they're spoken. No one writes them down. No one saves them for posterity. You are a living newspaper that is recycled daily, your editions forgotten by supper. There's an ongoing debate among scholars, though admittedly it's a very niche circle, about whether criers should be considered civil servants or performers. On the one hand, your job is state-sanctioned. You represent the law. On the other, you wear a hat that looks like it lost a fight with a peacock, and you occasionally burst into rhyme. Maybe you're both. Or maybe you're neither, and just someone with a really loud throat and a questionable pension plan. You move on again, your boots leaving muddy ovals behind you. The bell at your side swings gently as you walk, its metal cool even through your glove. There are 5 more stops before midday. Each one involves a different cluster of announcements. Some important, some trivial, all shouted with the same unwavering tone, and as you walk, people nod. They recognize you, not just as the man who yells things, but as a kind of walking calendar, court and circus all rolled into one. You are the rhythm of the town's days. When you appear, they know something official is about to happen, and that, in its own strange way, is comforting. Even the baker who once threw a stale roll at you now offers a polite wave. You stop, unfurl the scroll again. This next one's about a tax on cider exports and a gentle warning about kissing the magistrate's daughter. You clear your throat. The dogs are already listening.
The sun lifts higher now, curling golden fingers across the rooftops and warming the frost-bitten windows of the apothecary's shop. The bell you carry swings low and quiet as you pass a group of children huddled around a puddle, trying to convince a duck to join their merchant fleet. You nod to them gravely. They pause their negotiations to offer the solemn salute given to town criers everywhere. 2 fingers to the forehead, followed by a dramatic gasp. You respond with a wink. This next stop is the town's central square, the closest thing to a bustling metropolis you'll encounter without leaving a 10-mile radius. There's a crude wooden platform here, sometimes used for market day performances and other times for more official business, like when a public apology must be made for illegal turnip hoarding. The square is slowly filling with merchants rolling out bolts of rough cloth, bakers stacking baskets, and one suspicious-looking man pretending not to sell anything at all from a covered cart that definitely smells like fermented eel. You mount the platform. It creaks beneath your boots. The crowd turns toward you in a slow wave, not out of curiosity, but habit. Your presence means it's time for the list. The list is the daily bulletin. It's not always long, but it's always mixed. 1 part royal decree, 1 part town gossip, 1 part weather update, and, if the scribe was feeling poetic that morning, 1 part unnecessarily dramatic haiku. You unroll your scroll. Oyez, Oyez, Oyez. You call, your voice bouncing off shop walls and baker awnings. There's a man selling hot chestnuts who flinches dramatically every time you shout. You consider lowering your voice, but remember your contract. Projection is literally clause 3, right after must wear official hat at all times and must not cry while crying. Be it known to all gathered, you begin, that the bridge on Goosewater Lane remains closed until further notice, on account of the continued presence of the goose. You pause, letting the chuckles bubble up. The goose has been terrorizing commuters for a week now. It has claimed the bridge as sovereign territory and responds to all challengers with flapping violence. There's talk of negotiating. You continue. The town alehouse license is set for renewal, and the council reminds the public that hurling tankards during darts night will henceforth result in a 3-shilling fine and a temporary ban from pickled egg privileges. That gets a groan from the corner. Probably someone who recently lost an argument over darts rules and pickled egg etiquette. You finish the announcement with a flare, let all take heed, and lower your bell. The crowd doesn't clap. That would be too enthusiastic for this hour. But there are murmurs of approval, and at least 3 nods. That's practically a standing ovation for a Tuesday. Stepping down, you pass by the scribe who writes the town records. He's already scratching a note in his little leather-bound book, likely recording that you again said, "Oyez," in a slightly theatrical tone. He's secretly jealous. His voice doesn't carry past his own nose. You wander toward the edge of the square, where a tailor has set up a rack of second-hand cloaks, and a boy is juggling apples of questionable freshness. The boy pauses as you approach and offers you a bruised one as a crier's fee. You accept it with the dignity of a man who has been pelted by worse. Now seems like a good time to talk about your pay. Contrary to popular belief, town criers were not lavishly compensated. You are, after all, yelling government propaganda and local irritations to people who would rather be milking goats. Most criers were given a modest wage from the town council, supplemented by housing allowances, meals, and, most critically, legal immunity while performing official duties. Legal immunity, in your case, is not theoretical. Last year, a particularly spirited declaration about new chamber pot disposal zones nearly caused a riot. One man hurled a boot. Another tried to argue that his rooster was exempt. Through it all, you remain protected by law and by the very quick ducking of your head. There are legends, unconfirmed, of course, of criers being tipped with pies, kisses, or the occasional goat. Historians still argue whether such stories are true or simply embroidered memories passed down through particularly theatrical family lines. You certainly wouldn't say no to APIE. As you walk past a group of fishwives trading insults in 3 different dialects, a stray memory flutters up. You once cried a message during a thunderstorm, standing ankle-deep in puddle water, while your hat flapped wildly in the wind. The parchment dissolved halfway through your reading, and you were forced to improvise the rest. You quoted a play. No one noticed that that's another thing about this job. You learn quickly that tone matters more than content. You could shout, "The moon has melted and the cows have formed a union." And, as long as you said it in the proper cadence, someone would probably take it seriously and try to milk the union steward. You stop beside the town well and lean on the stone rim. The next item on your scroll is simple: a missing dog. Brown, scruffy, answers to Milo or Oyu. You read it aloud, with care. Somewhere nearby, a little girl smiles softly from her doorway. You see her clutching a ragged toy under her arm. The dog, you hope, returns by supper. A woman approaches you with a question: whether the tax on chimney smoke applies to households with shared chimneys. You glance at your scroll, realize there's nothing definitive, and promise to inquire with the guild. Which is crier speak for, "I have no idea, but I'll ask the loudest person I know and repeat their answer tomorrow." She thanks you and slips you a warm scone. It crumbles in your hand, buttery and absurdly pleasant. You take a bite, raise your bell in appreciation, and begin your slow march toward the northern end of town. The bell doesn't ring this time. There's no need. The street ahead is quiet, and you feel the rhythm of the day beginning to settle, like flour in a mixing bowl. You'll cry again soon. Something about chimney maintenance and possibly an escaped duck. But for now, you enjoy the silence. You are the voice of the town. And the town, for the moment, is listening. Northward you go, where the town begins to unravel into fields and stone cottages, homes whose chimneys lean slightly like tired sentinels. The road narrows, hemmed in by dry-stacked walls and the occasional sheep who looks at you with the slow, judgmental blink of someone who knows you once tripped on your own bell rope. Your boots squelch a little as the ground softens. A few cart wheels have left tracks in the mud, forming neat, wobbly rows that somehow always guide you precisely where you need to go. You reach the hedgerow marking the boundary of the smithy's lot and take a breath. Time for your next announcement. Oyez, oyez, oyez. You call, the countryside air swallowing the sound like a thick pillow. Let it be known that the forge on Miller's Lane is closed today, due to excessive grumbling and minor anvil injury. A pause. Somewhere inside, a hammer drops. Then a voice calls out, "Tell him I'm not dead, just slightly on fire." You smile, adjusting the scroll in your gloved hand. The smith is famously dramatic. Last week he claimed to have invented fire-resistant chickens. Historians may one day argue whether this was a metaphor or just a very unfortunate poultry incident. As you stroll past the edge of the field, you catch sight of a peculiar mound just off the road, a lichen-covered stone with a brass plaque. It reads, "Here stood Gregory Pritchard, town crier, 1498 to 1542, lost to an experimental cheese wheel." You pause respectfully. Gregory's legacy lives on in a festival where locals attempt to roll dairy down a hill without injury. Being a town crier, you realize, has always carried a hint of danger. This is a good time to talk about the wardrobe. Because, as you know, the role comes with more than just a scroll and bell. It comes with the outfit. Your uniform is part armor, part peacock, and entirely impractical. The coat is scarlet with gold trim. It weighs about as much as a small child and takes 3 people to properly hang without creasing. The breeches are black and velvet and always pick up lint from places you don't remember walking. Your hat, of course, is a tricorn monstrosity adorned with a plume that changes color depending on weather, mood, and the proximity of startled birds. Historians still debate the origins of the feathered hat. Some say it evolved from a military tradition. Others claim it was a visibility aid. After all, nothing cuts through fog like a 6-inch blue ostrich feather. Regardless, it has become your most identifiable feature. Once, during a particularly windy spring, your hat took off mid-announcement and landed in the mayor's soup. The mayor declared it an omen and canceled the tax hike. You've kept the hat slightly loose ever since. The townsfolk appreciate the uniform more than they'll admit. Children wave when they see the red coat. Bakers set out an extra roll. And there's always at least one elderly resident who insists you look just like that crier we had in 32, but with better legs. Your next stop is the convent's boundary wall. You don't cry announcements inside, too echoey, but you do read them aloud just beyond the gate. Today's notice is a request from the abbess herself. Oyez, be it known that Sister Winifred's collection of lost laundry shall be burned at dusk, and that any further unauthorized sock distribution will result in silent contemplation. You pause, suppressing a smile. The sisters may have taken a vow of silence, but their passive-aggressive notes rival the town council's best minutes. The child peeks through the ivy-covered wall. She giggles, then vanishes again. You bow slightly toward the gate and move on. As you walk, you reflect on the strange intimacy of your job. You're not a celebrity, exactly, more like furniture that occasionally yells. But people trust you. They tell you things. Not secrets, but soft confessions. The baker's new yeast experiment. The mason's hope to propose next harvest. The widow who dreams about moving to the seaside but never quite packs. You carry these stories in your coat's deep pockets. Next to the scroll and the emergency handkerchief, there's a story you remember especially well. A few winters ago, you read an announcement about a new firewood tax. Nothing unusual, but as you walked away, a man tugged your sleeve. He'd recently lost his wife and was living alone on the edge of town. He asked, quietly, if the tax applied to driftwood gathered from the river. You said you'd ask, but in the meantime, you suggested he gather discreetly, maybe at dawn, and to wear gloves. That spring, he brought you a carved wooden bell handle that's still in use today. That's the kind of legacy criers leave. Not statues or songs, but small changes, whispered advice, moments softened by empathy. You pass under a crooked archway, one stone perpetually damp no matter the season. The baker's boy is there, attempting to juggle bread rolls again. One lands with a soft thwap at your feet. You raise your eyebrow. He bows deeply and gestures as if to say for the people. You pick it up, bite it, and nod, surprisingly good, back to business. The next announcement involves a disputed fence, 2 stubborn neighbors, and a goose with uncertain allegiances. You ring your bell. Oyez, a reminder that property lines must be marked clearly, and that livestock is not permitted to vote in local matters. That gets a chuckle from an older gentleman whittling a stick nearby. He mutters, "Goose still has better opinions than the tanner." You tip your hat. The bell swings again. These little pockets of town life, you realize, are what make the job worthwhile. You're not just delivering edicts from faceless officials. You're narrating the rhythm of life here, setting its tempo, marking its jokes. Like a metronome wrapped in velvet and pinned with brass buttons, you reach the edge of your route, a small outcropping overlooking a patch of moorland. The breeze is gentle here, enough to ruffle your cuffs. There's a final announcement. Tomorrow's fair will feature the return of the performing pig. You deliver it with full gusto. You even add a dramatic pause after backflips. Then, scroll rolled and bell tucked under your arm. You sit on a sun-warmed stone and let your legs dangle. The town stretches behind you like a quilt, chimneys smoking, carts rattling, dogs barking at nothing in particular. You exhale. One more circuit to go before sunset. And maybe, if you're lucky, another scone. By the time you rise from your sun-warmed stone, the shadows of the chimneys have grown long and lean across the cobbled streets. The town has begun to hum with the low, rhythmic bustle that settles in during the hour between midday and market close. That's when you head for your next cluster of homes, clustered like gossiping hens along the gently sloping east lane. This is the part of the route where you walk slowly, partly because the hill is steep and partly because everyone here insists on a personal greeting. Mrs. Henley, at number 4, believes a polite nod is an insult unless accompanied by a limerick. You oblige. There once was a baker from Pye, whose pies made the townspeople cry. 'Twas onion, not sweet, that fooled every cheat, and now he just bakes humble rye. Mrs. Henley cackles and offers you a boiled sweet wrapped in a lace doily. You accept with appropriate reverence and move on. The next few houses present fewer social hurdles, just a slow parade of elderly folk who nod as if you're part of the scenery, and several watchful cats who clearly believe they own the street and merely tolerate your passing. You ring your bell again. Not loudly, just enough to let the homes ahead know that news is on the breeze. Oyez, Oyez. Be informed that the council's official stance on alleyway herb gardens remains under review. Until such time as rosemary becomes an outlaw, all plantings must be maintained under 1 foot high or declared ornamental. From a windowsill, a familiar voice calls out, "Does time count?" You offer the diplomatic shrug of a man who has never once identified time correctly. Only if it tells you so, you say, and the window closes with a snort. This section of town has a long tradition of unofficial gardening. It began in the 1600s when a shipment of cabbage seeds was mistakenly delivered instead of cannonballs. The town, being too polite to correct the error, simply grew a lot of cabbage and declared peace with itself. Historians still debate whether this error led to the Great Muffin Truce of 1633, in which a proposed militia was replaced by competitive baking. You reach the end of East Lane and pause beside a crooked milestone marker, worn so smooth by centuries of fingers that the numbers are more legend than fact. This is a moment for your second voice, the quiet one. You unroll a slim note and read softly. It is requested that the good people of East Lane be aware. The nightjar nesting under the old bench is not to be disturbed. This includes singing to it, offering crumbs, or introducing it to musical instruments. You glance at the bench. Sure enough, a nest of twigs, and a bird whose expression can only be described as over it. A young boy across the lane has been trying to teach the bird the recorder for 3 days now. You hope this warning buys the bird some peace. Further along the way, you approach the town bathhouse, once Roman, then medieval, now mostly drafty. The manager greets you with a towel over one shoulder and steam fogging his spectacles. He hands you a folded note with a flourish and a wink. You unroll it and begin. Let all know that bath tokens will be half price this Friday, in honor of St. Hyacinth's annual cleansing. From inside the bathhouse, someone yells, "About time." You hear a splash. You move on. The smell of damp wool and roasted chestnuts mingles in the late afternoon air. You find yourself outside the schoolhouse, where rows of uneven benches have emptied for the day, and chalk still hangs in the air like mist. The headmaster, an angular man whose beard is shaped like a quill, greets you with his usual skeptical glance. He hands you a tiny scroll with excessive wax seals. Oyez. The grammar school wishes to announce that all students found submitting false Latin will henceforth be tasked with retranslating local pub signs into Greek. There's a groan from a cluster of students nearby, followed by a whispered, "Do we even know Greek?" The headmaster replies, "You will." You smile to yourself. There was a time when the town crier was the town teacher, when literacy was a precious skill shared through bell and breath. Now, you read more for the rhythm than the understanding. Some days, the ink on the scrolls runs or smudges. And sometimes you guess. You once declared a mandatory pumpkin curfew when the word was actually parish council review. But no one noticed, and the pumpkins went home quietly. A cart clatters by, loaded with sacks of grain and a single goat wearing a ribbon. It bleats at you once, as if in greeting. You salute it back. In this town, it's entirely possible the goat is a minor noble. You pass the apothecary, who's hanging bundles of herbs in her window. She waves and gestures to your scroll. You flip it open. Oyez. All are warned that the new medicinal syrup, though delicious, is not to be confused with pudding. Repeat, not pudding. You catch the eye of a man with purple-stained lips across the square. He slowly turns and walks the other direction. You are now in the town's older quarter, narrower streets, taller chimneys, door knockers shaped like suspicious owls. You walk slowly, bell resting against your thigh. These houses are quiet, mostly occupied by those who nap long and rise slow. You keep your voice gentle. Oh yes. Notices may now be posted at the town square's new bulletin board. Please refrain from aggressive handwriting or gluing dead flowers. You glance toward the board. Sure enough, someone's attached a limerick about a suspicious pie and a drawing of what may be a duck wearing trousers. Yet there's always one dot, and now. You near the clock tower, its face tilted slightly like a curious child. The time reads somewhere between afternoon and nearly supper. You let the bell chime once, a soft reminder that the day is aging gently, that you've nearly completed your second round. One more circuit remains before the sun dips fully, and the hearths begin to glow behind windows. You press your palm to the cool stone base of the tower, a ritual you began long ago, after reading about a town where criers rang the bell from horseback, bare-chested in winter. You've never repeated that approach, but you honor the tradition in your own way. And with the final bend of this hour, you roll up your scroll, brush the crumbs of Henley's sweet from your coat, and begin to walk back toward the square, toward whatever news, nonsense, or neighborly dispute will need crying next. You round the bend back into the main square, where the pace of the town is now somewhere between leisurely and mildly concerned about dinner. The shadows of the timber-framed buildings stretch across the cobbles like long, sleepy fingers, and the chimneys begin to exhale little puffs of smoke in a staggered rhythm, like the town itself sighing into the evening. Your bell clinks softly against your leg. You don't ring it just yet. Here in the square, people already expect you. It's the town's central stage, where everyone, from pie sellers to pig traders, converges daily to sell, haggle, or simply stare at each other with well-meaning suspicion. You pause by the fountain, now mostly inhabited by 3 pigeons and a duck that seems to be going through something emotionally complex. The mayor once tried to name it municipal mascot, but the duck bit him. Twice that a group of apprentices is gathered by the alehouse door, arms folded, waiting for the evening announcements. One of them has written a limerick on his tunic in charcoal. You silently vow not to ask. You raise your bell and ring it once, firm but measured, enough to draw attention without startling the elderly or sending the duck into another spiral. Oyez, Oyez. Be hereby informed. Tomorrow's market shall commence precisely when Mrs. Blanton's rooster crows twice. If said rooster refuses to cooperate, the bell ringer will step in, likely grumpily. There's a polite ripple of laughter from the crowd, and one lad raises his hand as if to ask a question in class. What if the rooster crows 3 times? You lean forward, theatrically serious. Then we all go back to bed. Another chuckle. Another small victory in the eternal game of keeping sleepy townsfolk vaguely entertained. You consult your scroll. The next announcement is more bureaucratic. Oh yes, the town ledger shall henceforth be copied onto fresh parchment. All previous entries involving ducks, debts, or disputed fence ownership will be reviewed. Please report any exaggerations. A few sideways glances are exchanged. You can almost see the mental lists forming. In a town this small, disputed fences are practically a winter sport. You move across the square, heading for the far corner where the blacksmith's cousin, who insists on being called the Iron Bard, has set up a stall selling poetic nails. Yes, really. Each nail comes with a short verse. You once hammered in a shelf and found a haiku about existential despair 2 weeks later. He gives you a solemn nod and hands you a tiny scroll written in dramatic purple ink. You unroll it. Oh yes, citizens. The Iron Bard proclaims a limited-time offer. For every 10 nails purchased, receive 1 free ode to your roof beam. Also, discounts for left-handed carpenters. You pause. He says that's a metaphor. Probably. Further along the square, you stop by the baker's stall. The air here is warm and heavy with cinnamon and the faintest threat of melted butter. She presses a small tart into your palm and whispers, "No need to announce. It's for being a good lad." You nod gratefully, tucking it into the inside pocket of your coat, the one already lined with crumbles from similar kindnesses to As you pass the tannery. The smell nudges you in the nose like a damp sock. You brace yourself. Tanners are hardy folk, unbothered by blood, stink, or bureaucratic confusion. You deliver their news with practiced speed. Oh yes. Let it be known that the tanning pits are currently off-limits to unattended children, livestock, or wandering philosophers. Yes, again. From inside, a voice bellows. Tell Marcus I mean it this time. You make a mental note to avoid Marcus for at least a week. If there's a quiet moment, then, as you make your way past the tailor's shop, the window displays a half-finished doublet on a mannequin that, inexplicably, wears a monocle. The tailor claims the monocle helps cut a better silhouette. Historians still debate whether this is artistic genius or an elaborate dare. You raise your scroll. Oyez, Oyez. The tailor now offers seasonal embroidery, falling leaves, harvest wheat, and an unsettlingly accurate hedgehog motif. Ask about discounts for couples or twins. A couple nearby mutters something about finally matching in a respectable way. You leave them to it and cross toward the south alley, which is technically part of your route, but rarely includes anyone interested in news. It's mostly stray cats, barrels that may or may not be fermenting anything legal, and one man who seems to think he's a wizard. Still, duty is duty. Oh yes, you whisper, more for the alley than for any specific soul. Be reminded that alleyway duels must be registered, and invisible swords are not permitted. The wizard nods solemnly and waves a spoon at you. You return the gesture with equal solemnity. Why now? Your voice has taken on that warm, familiar rasp, the sort you only get after 3 circuits and a boiled sweet from Mrs. Henley. You reach the town well, where several women are drawing water and exchanging gossip in low, melodic tones that carry just enough for plausible deniability. You bow, ring your bell gently, and deliver the final square-based announcement. Oh yes, due to unexpected enthusiasm, the Well Bucket Poetry Competition is extended by a fortnight. Rhyming required, slander discouraged. One woman claps lightly, her sleeves dripping. You should enter, she says. You assure her that your talents are best reserved for bell-based iambic declarations. The crowd thins as people return to their homes, errands complete, curiosities sated. Children trail behind parents like mismatched shadows. The duck leaves the fountain and waddles down an alley with purpose. You, too, head off, not toward home yet, but toward the last quarter of your route. There's still the western ridge, where the land dips and the houses lean slightly to one side, as if eavesdropping on the moor. The announcements for that region are in a separate scroll, tucked neatly into your coat, marked with a wax seal that smells faintly of nutmeg. You'll deliver them as the sun tips toward the treetops and the town takes its final breath before supper. You walk slowly, savoring the rhythm of your steps and the creak of your boots. The square empties behind you, and you glance once more at the clock tower. It marks the hour with a single, slightly off-key chime. As usual, you smile. The job of a town crier is rarely dramatic. It doesn't make headlines. It makes bedtime. It marks the start of tea, the end of confusion, the small sigh of a town that knows where it stands, because someone in a red coat told them gently, and with a bell, and now, onward. The next bend awaits. And maybe, if you're lucky, the next tart will have jam. The sun is now slipping lower across the slate roofs, painting the town in a soft, golden wash that seems to hush even the birds. You turn westward, toward the part of town known as the Ridge, though ridge may be generous. It's more of a gently inclined lane that insists on feeling important. Here, the houses are older, their foundations sunk just a bit deeper, as if settling into a long nap. The doors creak more, the window panes ripple with age, and the chimneys puff like they've seen things. You walk slower here. The breeze does most of the talking. You unseal the wax on your final scroll of the day, a comforting ritual now. This one is thick, folded carefully in thirds, and faintly scented like an old drawer of dried oranges and forgotten letters. You tap your bell against your palm, but don't ring yet. There's a mood here. You wait until the stone steps grow warm beneath your boots. Then, soft and measured, you chime once. Oh yes, oh yes. Be advised that Mr. Peveril's missing spectacles have been located on his own head. Order restored. Panic discouraged. From an upstairs window, Mr. Peveril waves sheepishly. They were very snug. You nod like this is a common occurrence. It is. He's lost them 6 times this month. Once while wearing 2 pairs, you descend the ridge slope slightly, into an elbow of road that curves around the old cooperage. It's been empty since the last barrel maker left town to seek his fortune with wheelbarrows, though the building still smells deeply of sap and soot. You pause in front of it, less out of duty more because you enjoy the quiet echo here. The birds don't sing here. They reflect. You lift your scroll again. Oh yes, the annual barrel rolling contest is confirmed for midsummer. Splinters expected. Bravery optional. Judges will accept bribes in the form of plum jam. You glance around theatrically, but only the good kind. An old woman leaning on a cane near the hedge claps once. I knew jam would come back around. You continue your slow arc through Ridge Town, passing the patch of ground the locals still refer to as the Hanging Garden. Not for executions, mercifully, but because a rather ambitious baker once tried to grow tomatoes in suspended baskets. The result was an incident involving gravity, 3 upset hens, and a very startled vicar. Now, it's mostly daffodils. You ring your bell softly again, like a whisper at the door of history. Oh yes, the council wishes to remind residents not to post advertisements for imaginary goods. Invisible cloaks, bottled size, and unicorn ointment are to be treated as satire, not commerce. You glance toward the small sign nailed to a fence. For sale. A jar of 3 yesterdays and a whisper of next Thursday. You nod in appreciation. Creative. One house over, a girl is painting a wooden duck with astonishing concentration. The duck is already painted. Several times. You nod approvingly. She curtsies without looking up. Further down, there's a weathered bench where 2 gentlemen are debating, again, the proper way to prune a hedgerow. This conversation has now stretched into its 2nd year. You suspect it may be performance art. You read without preamble. Oh yes, in matters of hedgerow management, the town takes no official stance. However, it recommends biscuits during disputes. One of the men points triumphantly at the other. The other simply hands him a biscuit. Crisis averted. You pause beside the last cottage on this stretch, Miss Tilling's house. She's ancient in that gentle, time-bent way that makes you wonder if she once gave advice to the Romans. She's sitting on her porch with a shawl that might double as a historical archive. You give her a wink and raise your bell. Oh yes, a gentle reminder from Miss Tilling. All tea should be brewed no fewer than 3 minutes and no more than 5, unless disaster is desired. She nods gravely and holds up a teacup as if in salute. You raise your bell in return. You once made the mistake of steeping her tea too long. You have never fully recovered from the look she gave you. As you walk, the ridge bends back toward the heart of town, and you feel the curve of the day begin to close around you. Still, a few notices remain. Oh yes, the Westfield Scarecrow, while now technically wearing trousers, is not to be considered a voting member of the parish. Apologies for the confusion during last week's meeting. Someone in the distance laughs, and you feel a flush of satisfaction. These notices, absurd as they sometimes are, carry a kind of power. Not legislative, perhaps, but connective. A shared silliness, a ritual of presence. Historians still argue whether the role of the town crier was ever essential or merely decorative. Whether their announcements carried true authority or just noise and color. But you know the truth. You are the bell that breaks up silence, the scroll that adds a heartbeat to the day. People wait for your voice, and you wait for them. You pass the low wooden fence that once enclosed a goat, Sir Ginger Snaps, who believed he was a knight. He has since retired, but his legacy endures in the small brass plaque, knighted by community vote, dethroned for eating laundry. You lift your voice once more. Oh yes, lost laundry may be collected from the tree behind the cooperage. Please identify your items politely. You end this round with a bow. There's no one visibly watching, but you feel the eyes of the ridge on you. The houses, the fences, even the window shutters that blink a little too slowly. And with that, you tuck your scroll away and start the gentle descent back toward the lower lanes. Your route has been long, and supper smells are starting to drift across the stones. Rosemary, yeast, something burnt but hopeful. You don't walk quickly. There's no need. You've carried the day in your bell and your voice. The town has received its notices, its gossip, its small absurdities. You've done your part. As you pass back into the main square, the duck is now seated. Yes, seated. On a flower pot, as though meditating on the nature of clay. You pause and whisper your final West Lane line. And good evening. The duck does not respond. The square is mellowing into evening now. Its stones cooling, its windows flickering with the first hints of candlelight. As you pass the baker's shutters, a warm scent of cardamom and scorched flour drifts out. mingling with the far-off crackle of someone failing to light a hearth with too much confidence and not enough kindling. You check your scroll again, though by now it's less about needing the words than honoring the rhythm of the thing. Reading each notice, even the most trivial, helps close the loop, like tucking the day into its own tidy envelope. So you raise your bell once more, give it a soft, almost indulgent ring, and lift your voice. Oyez, oyez. A reminder, the clock tower bell remains 4 minutes slow. Use accordingly. Time is relative, especially in this town. You glance up at the clock tower as you say it, its hands stubbornly declaring the wrong hour with the confidence of someone who's read half a book and now teaches a class on it. The pigeons nested inside the belfry seem unbothered by temporal inaccuracy. The tower, of course, is yours too, in a way. Your domain isn't limited to scrolls and sidewalks. It includes the soundscape, the tempo, the communal tick of days. It's said the town crier used to wind the clock manually, a tradition that ended sometime after the great incident involving a ladder, a thunderstorm, and one deeply judgmental squirrel. Still, you pat the base of the tower as you pass. Keep up the good work, you stubborn old-time pretender. From here, you begin your loop around the market quarter, where the town's rhythms have always pulsed fastest, especially when measured in gossip. You call the next item before you even turn the corner. Oh yes, the haberdasher wishes to clarify. Yesterday's sale on 6 buttons for a shilling did not include ornamental toggles shaped like ducks, dragons, or Duke Henry's unfortunate face. Those are now legally considered art. There's a scoff from behind a stack of crates, followed by the unmistakable sound of someone chewing in protest. Likely Mr. Tweel, who swears by ornamental toggles and wears 3 on every lapel. You don't look directly at him. He appreciates the illusion of privacy. Next, you pass by the herbalist's stall, long closed for the day, but still wafting lavender and faint menace. Earlier this year, she accidentally fermented a salve that caused mild levitation in geese. You step carefully. Oh yes, the herbalist would like to remind customers that her dream tonic is not recommended for use during council meetings, competitive gardening, or moments of existential crisis. Someone behind a shutter laughs. You offer a quick wink to the window. There's a sweet pause here, between stalls, where the cobblestones dip slightly and water collects from the afternoon drizzle. You hop over it absent-mindedly. Your route's so well-rehearsed you could likely cry your way through town in your sleep. In fact, you may have once done so. The bell, oddly enough, does not ring in dreams, but you can feel its weight there. Next up is your favorite absurdity of the evening. Oh yes, oh yes. Local children are advised that while invisible ink is not illegal, leaving it on walls labeled, "You'll never catch me," is highly suspicious. Also, please return Mrs. Cranley's garden gnome. He's deeply homesick. Ah yes, the gnome. Missing 3 days now. Historians still argue whether the first gnome theft in this town, back in 1682, was the birth of organized mischief or just a particularly rowdy midsummer night. Either way, gnome crime is now a seasonal inevitability. You cross paths with an elderly couple who nods solemnly at your notice. "We saw that gnome on the roof of the post office last night." The man murmurs. You nod just as solemnly. The usual spot. Past the cheesemonger's corner, there's a chalkboard that changes its message daily. Today it reads, "Buy cheese or face mild disappointment." You approve. No notice needed, but you do pause at the well. Oh yes, please do not deposit coins, buttons, or dramatic sighs into the town well. It is not, in fact, a wishing well, though it does appreciate the attention. You lower your voice conspiratorially. If it starts granting wishes, we'll revisit the policy. You move along the northern edge of the square now, where the cobbler's storefront is modest, but boasts the proudest doormat in town. You've got soul. He has never explained the pun, which only makes it more powerful. Oh yes, shoes left for repair are now sorted by general mood. Angry boots are shelved separately from wistful clogs. Please be mindful when retrieving footwear. The cobbler gives you a thumbs up from inside. He's currently arguing with a sandaled AT the far end of the square, just past the tilted mailbox and the goose-shaped weather vane that points southeast regardless of the wind. You pause for one final scroll reading of the day. Oh yes, oh yes. A final thought before supper. If you must duel, please use words, not turnips. We're still finding fragments from last week's misunderstanding outside the apothecary. A groan from somewhere behind the fountain confirms that the memory still stings. You give a gentle nod and move toward the alley that leads back toward the archive building. The real heart of your duties waits there. And though you could call it a day now, tuck your bell away and wrap yourself in the scent of leeks and butter rising from the tavern windows. You don't. Not just yet, because the notices aren't merely announcements. They are a map, and the day is only halfway explored. The square is mellowing into evening now, its stones cooling, its windows flickering with the first hints of candlelight. As you pass the baker's shutters, a warm scent of cardamom and scorched flour drifts out, mingling with the far-off crackle of someone failing to light a hearth with too much confidence and not enough kindling. You check your scroll again, though by now it's less about needing the words than honoring the rhythm of the thing. Reading each notice, even the most trivial, helps close the loop, like tucking the day into its own tidy envelope. So you raise your bell once more, give it a soft, almost indulgent chime, and begin. Oyez, Oyez. Please be advised that Mr. Hargreaves has finally retrieved his runaway wheelbarrow from the duck pond. Both parties are unharmed, but the wheelbarrow is deeply shaken. A ripple of amused acknowledgement follows you down the lane. You imagine the wheelbarrow, half submerged and contemplating the meaning of load-bearing life, and chuckle softly. These are the moments your job is made for. There's something about twilight that softens everything. The town, the faces, even the notices. You pass the cobbler's shop where a small sign reads, "Gone walking." Back by boot. This is not a typo. It's his usual joke. Every year, he holds a solitary parade in which he marches around town wearing one oversized boot of his own invention. He claims it adds height and gravitas. It mostly adds a limp. You announce it anyway. Oh yes, this Saturday, Master Tomlin the cobbler will perform his annual tall boot processional. Spectators are encouraged to clap politely and not point out the squeak. There's a certain thrill to reminding a town of its small, delightful absurdities. You're like a curator of communal quirks. Historians still debate whether the town crier ever truly mattered beyond ceremonial pomp. Some argue they were little more than glorified gossipers with bells. But here, you feel it. You are the hinge between the hours, the keeper of the strange little threads that stitch a place together. You wander toward Bell's Nook, no relation to your own instrument, though it seems fitting. Bell's Nook is a bend in the alley where the stones were laid slightly askew, causing a faint harmonic chime when cartwheels roll over them at just the right angle. Children call it the singing corner. Adults pretend they don't believe in it, but they always walk slower there. You ring once, softly, as if in duet. Oyez, a gentle reminder. Children found painting the alley cats with stripes are to return the animals to their natural hue before dusk. Apologies to the vicar's wife for the tiny tiger incident. The cats, you suspect, have started to enjoy the attention. One is currently strolling past with what appears to be a watercolor sunset across its back. It winks at you. Down by the public green, an impromptu cricket match has broken out, though none of the players appear to know the rules. One is using a broom, one is playing defense with a frying pan, and someone in a cloak is pretending to be the ghost of the umpire. You nod solemnly in approval. It's all very orderly, in the way a flock of geese might be called orderly. You pause at the edge of the green and clear your throat. Oh yes, informal sports are encouraged provided no sandwiches are injured in the course of play. Spectral umpires are permitted, but must remain impartial. A boy with jam on his chin salutes you with his spoon. Good enough. Further along, you reach the weatherboard, a small painted slab nailed to a post, featuring rotating labels like "probably sunny," "moistly suspicious," and "clouds with opinions." No one maintains it officially. It updates itself, somehow. You add your notice beside it. Oh yes, tomorrow's weather is expected to include a light drizzle of confusion, followed by scattered clarity around tea time. Umbrellas optional. Sarcasm advised. As you speak, someone in the shadows laughs. You smile without turning. Your voice often arrives before you do. It's part of the role. You glance to the south, toward the ivy-covered wall of the apothecary, where an announcement hangs upside down. You resist the urge to fix it. People might think you've gone mad, or worse, unofficially helpful. You announce anyway. Oh yes, Madame Sibylline's shop will be closed tomorrow for her monthly ritual of inventory and extremely delicate sneezing. Please do not disturb the potions unless you wish to taste colors. The ivy rustles mysteriously. You take that as agreement. Just past the shop, you see old Mr. Pemblin struggling to remove a pie from his windowsill. It appears to have adhered itself to the tray with something approaching zeal. You lift your bell. Oyez. The town wishes Mr. Pemblin the best of luck in freeing his gooseberry tart. Assistance may be provided in the form of encouragement or gently applied cutlery. He pauses, looks up at you, and gives a thumbs up. The tart does not budge. You wind around to the back of the square where the lamplighter is already at work. His ladder is older than he is, and somehow sturdier. The lamps flicker to life with little sighs of gaslight breath. You nod to each other, professional respect. Oyez. The lamplighter reminds all citizens to keep clear of the ladder unless they wish to be politely frowned upon. You begin to move toward the North Road now, but not before one final glance over your shoulder. The square is bathed in orange now, warm and flickering. You swear the buildings lean inward slightly, like they're listening. You give your final ring of the hour, gentle, not ceremonial, and speak not from your scroll, but from memory. Oyez, the day is winding down. Tea awaits. Troubles may resume tomorrow, if they must. Then you walk on, bell swinging loosely at your side. By the time you reach the edge of the archive district, the streets are quieter, padded in the hush of settling dusk. The stones here are more uneven, the buildings a touch more crooked, as if they've slouched under the weight of too many centuries of books. You always slow your pace a little in this part of town, not just to avoid twisted ankles, though that's a respectable reason, but because the air here feels like ink and old paper and secrets waiting politely to be remembered. The archive itself is a squat, huffy-looking structure that seems determined not to impress anyone. No ornate carvings, no welcoming lanterns, just a heavy wooden door and a plaque that reads, with great dignity, records and notices, since 1398, mostly. The mostly was added during the Great Filing Rebellion of 1817, when the junior clerks locked themselves in the tea cupboard in protest of alphabetical order. You push the door open gently, and it creaks like a groggy librarian being disturbed from a nap. Inside, it's a forest of shelves and scrolls, the scent of dust and beeswax mingling in the air. You nod to the resident archivist, Mistress Glenn, who is currently elbow-deep in a drawer labeled Gossip, Potentially Useful, Volume 7. She doesn't look up, but she does grunt in what you interpret as affectionate acknowledgement. You step over to the crier's desk, your desk, and unroll the scrolls from your satchel. One by one, you press each with a wax seal, murmuring the traditional phrases as you do. Spoken aloud, received by ears, remembered by ink. It's a ritual that's been performed for hundreds of years, possibly longer, though historians still argue whether the phrase, received by ears, was a later addition from an especially poetic crier who also played the lute. Regardless, it's oddly comforting. Like tucking your work into bed as you seal the final scroll, your eyes drift to a shelf labeled Crier Logs, 1432 to 1507. One of your predecessors, a certain Miles the Mild, had a habit of doodling cats into the margins of every announcement involving poultry. His work is still cited in town council meetings. You smile and pull out the logbook for today. It's leather-bound and heavy, faintly smelling of lavender and treacle from a long-ago spill no one ever truly cleaned up. You jot down each notice from memory, your pen looping lazily across the page. Reported, wheelbarrow incident, time, 6:37 p.m., mood, damp but optimistic. Resolution, peace restored between tools and poultry. You pause. Also, pie-related assistance requested. Status, ongoing. From the back of the archive, you hear a sneeze and a small crash. Mistress Glenn calls out. That was deliberate. You don't ask what was broken. Probably a jar labeled miscellaneous, smells. After finishing the log, you stretch and let your gaze wander the room. The town's memory lives here. Every announcement, every oddly phrased lost and found notice, every apology issued on behalf of a goose. It's a strange kind of immortality, being a crier. Your voice disappears into the air, but your words get tucked into drawers and shelves and occasionally adapted into plays performed by enthusiastic children with too much face paint. There's a draft from somewhere. You follow it instinctively, your bell lightly tapping your hip, and discover a window cracked open just enough to let in the smell of smoke from someone's chimney and the faint sound of a violin from down the street. You lean on the windowsill, watching as the town flickers below. It looks smaller from up here, neater. The crooked chimneys like exclamation points on an old, affectionate letter. Oyez, you whisper, just for yourself. The stars are punching in for the night shift. All is mostly well. You linger a moment longer before returning inside, where you tuck the sealed notices into their assigned drawer. Each one slots in with a faint papery side in a drawer marked Inquiries, Miscellaneous. You find a half-forgotten scrap in a younger hand. What happens to the town crier if no one listens? You read it twice. It's unsigned. Probably a child or a junior clerk trying to be deep. Still, the question tugs at you. What has happened? You consider for a long moment. Then you pull out your pen and write beneath it. He keeps ringing the bell. Just in case. You close the drawer. Back at your desk, you find a slip of parchment folded neatly in the shape of a bird. Inside, someone, perhaps Mistress Glenn, though she'd deny it, has written, "Reminder, Friday's notice must include warning about soup temperatures. Last time was chaos." You nod solemnly. Soup can be a dangerous force. Before you leave, you make one final entry in the night log. All scrolls delivered. Archive secured. Bell quiet. No riots. Mild unrest due to cheese confusion resolved. Historians still debate whether a quiet day is a success for a town crier. You know the truth. It's the best kind. You step outside and gently shut the door. The lock clicks like an old friend. Around you, the town is asleep or nearly so, curtains drawn, lamps lowered, geese mysteriously absent. Your bell rests heavy in your hand. Not urgent. Not yet. You follow the narrow path away from the archive, shoes brushing soft moss that's crept between the cobbles. There's a shortcut here, an old one, known mostly to postmen, cats, and you, that loops gently behind the fishmonger's and the tiny tailor's shop where no garment is ever quite symmetrical by design. This route brings you to the riverfront just as the last light slips away. The river Oltmere is not grand nor swift. It murmurs rather than roars, preferring to carry tales than trade. You lean on the low stone wall for a moment, letting the cool air off the water comb through your thoughts. The river is a historian in its own right. Its banks have heard every version of the truth. Official proclamations, whispered regrets, lovers' arguments about whether to move to the North Quarter. And yes, your voice, echoing down from time to time with important updates like, "Please stop tying decorative flags to the swans." You move along the quay where the evening market has long since packed up, save for one stubborn vendor who's still trying to sell onion pasties that now qualify more as history than cuisine. "Oh yes," you announce quietly, ringing your bell once in warning. Any pasty sold after sundown is consumed at one's own culinary peril. The crier's office assumes no responsibility for digestive misfortune. The vendor winks at you. He's not offended. You bought one of those very pasties last week and still bear the emotional scars that a small group of night watch volunteers passes by, each armed with a lantern and varying levels of alertness. You recognize old Marna among them. She once tried to form a neighborhood militia because she thought someone was stealing echoes from her chimney. Turns out it was just her nephew learning the recorder. Badly, you salute them. Oh yes, the town thanks our noble watchers. May their lanterns stay lit and their boredom remain tolerable. They nod, pleased. One of them offers you a peppermint. You accept. It's oddly warmed, at the far end of the river walk. You arrive at the Crier's Bridge, not named after your profession, though many pretend it is. The bridge predates most of the town, a squat arch of weathered stone that groans in wet seasons and occasionally sings in the wind. Some say if you stand at its center at midnight and whisper a secret, it carries it straight to the town founder's bones, and one knows where the founder is buried. You suspect he just wandered off after naming the town and declaring it sufficiently charming. You stop in the middle of the bridge and glance down at the water, where faint reflections of candlelight bob between reeds. Your bell dangles loosely at your side, but you don't ring it yet. Some spaces require silence. Instead, you murmur, "Oyez, you who watch and you who wait. Let this night carry no mischief and let the dreams be mostly pleasant." It's not on the scroll. It never is. But you've said this same phrase here every evening for the past 12 years. Not because you must, because someone ought to. You press on, now back into streets less well-lit and more full of uneven surprises. Puddles where there shouldn't be puddles, lanterns flickering like they're practicing Morse code, and a suspiciously large toad that may be impersonating a stone. You don't announce anything about the toad. Some mysteries deserve their privacy. As you round a bend near the edge of town, you pass the Weaver's Guild, where a new notice has appeared on the outer wall, written in elegant cursive and sealed with blue wax. Spinning bee this Sunday. Theme: interpretive history. Costumes strongly encouraged. Last year's winner dressed as the concept of time. You grin and ring the bell. Oyez. Weavers to assemble this Sunday for friendly thread-based rivalry. Theme is historical interpretation. No pressure, but someone once stitched an entire depiction of the Corn Laws using only beige. You pause. Also, snacks provided. You swear you hear applause from behind a curtain. The weavers are always listening. Further along, you reach the edge of town proper, where the houses give way to small plots of farmland and the quiet chorus of livestock settling into sleep. Here, the bell becomes less about alert and more about reassurance. You call softly to the night air. Oyez. The fields report no misbehavior. Chickens accounted for. Moon rising as expected. One cow moos in gentle disagreement. You note the descent for the record. The last house on your route is technically outside the town border, but has always been considered honorary because it belonged to an early crier named Burn the Loud. Burn was known for having a voice like a cracked organ pipe and once accidentally started a duel with a sneeze. His descendants still live there, and though they're quieter, they keep a small bell mounted by the front door out of respect. You give it a single chime. It answers with a faint echo, like a sleepy hello from history that you've reached the edge now. The place where duty meets dusk, and the only thing ahead is open country, rustling trees, and the occasional fox with opinions. This is where you always stop, turn, and look back. The town, your town, is lit like a constellation of gentle mischief and tidy intentions. 100 windows flicker. A few doors still creak open and closed. Somewhere, someone is singing off-key and unapologetic. You raise your bell, just once, and speak into the space between stars and rooftops. Oyez. This town is resting now. Let the dreams come soft-footed and free of accounting. And then, with your bell still in hand, you begin your slow walk home. You cross back into the heart of town beneath the half-hearted glow of a guttering lantern that's been threatening retirement for several weeks. No one has replaced it yet, mostly out of curiosity, to see if it will finally give up or just keep clinging on out of spite. You pass under its dim halo, casting a long shadow that briefly startles a squirrel-sized dog emerging from a hedge with something suspiciously bun-shaped in its mouth. You consider making an announcement about pilfered pastries, but decide against it. Some crimes are best forgiven after sunset. The streets grow narrower here, winding like spilled ribbon. Every alley seems to have its own microclimate and backstory. You know them all, or at least the versions people tell when they're tired and generous with the truth that to your left is Flit Alley, where someone once attempted to set up a pop-up poetry stall that only accepted payment in compliments. It lasted 3 days and inspired 6 breakups. Further along is Badger Lane, named not for any actual badgers, but because a man named Badger once lived there and declared it the most important road in town during a cider-fueled town meeting in 1703. The name stuck, mostly out of pity. As you wind through these stories made of stone and hearsay, you notice a familiar flyer peeling off a wall. Tonight's notice about the cheese-tossing schedule. The ink has begun to run a little, giving it an impressionist charm. Someone has drawn a monocle and a mustache on the cheese. You pause. Oyez. You say quietly to the modified poster. Your elegance has not gone unnoticed. You continue on. You reach the Old Bell Square, a place not named after your instrument of office, but it's convenient nonetheless. In the center stands the weathered iron post where criers have stood for generations. It's not used as often now that announcements are made on the move, but tradition still demands a stop here every week. Tonight, you're early. You rest on the rim of the old fountain, dry now, home to a sleepy pigeon and an optimistic weed, and let yourself sit in the hush that follows a day of public address. The bell rests in your lap. Your voice hums behind your ribs, not tired, just folded in for the evening. The square smells faintly of roast parsnips and night-blooming flowers. You wonder, not for the first time, what it smelled like 200 years ago. Probably similar, plus more horses and fewer bath salts. You run your fingers over the worn carvings on the fountain. They're almost gone, but if you squint in just the right light, you can still read. Speak what must be spoken. Hear what ought to be heard. Historians still argue whether this was an official motto or just something one of the Masons etched in during a lunch break, possibly while having an existential crisis. Either way, it fits. As you sit, a small boy wanders into the square, dragging a stick along the cobblestones. He stops when he sees you and your bell. "Are you the one who says things?" he asks. You nod. "That's me." He thinks. "My gran says you used to be louder." You smile. Your gran probably used to have better hearing. He nods solemnly, then adds, "I want to be a bell person too." "Crier," you say gently. "But yes, you've got the curiosity for it." He brightens. "I can practice." "Oh yes. Oh yes. There's frogs in my boot." You clap lightly, bell still in hand. A strong opening. Very relatable. He grins and runs off into the night, stick tapping happily behind him. You linger a moment longer, watching the shadows grow friendlier as the square quiets again. Then, you stand and begin the final leg of your circuit. Your route bends toward the herbalist's shop, where the door is closed but the windows glow with soft green light. The air is thick with the scent of sage and peppermint, and possibly regret. The herbalist, Mistress Bramble, is known to offer dream remedies that occasionally work and occasionally turn your hair pink for 3 days. You ring your bell gently as you pass. "Oyez," you murmur. "All potions bottled. All tinctures tamed. May your dreams smell faintly of rosemary." You cross into Lantern Row, where the lamps are suspended on curved poles like sleepy shepherds watching their flocks of doorways and flower pots. You nod at each one, more out of habit than necessity. Down a crooked flight of steps is the Shoemaker's Hollow, a short, sunken lane where every third house is still occupied by some offshoot of the Cobble family. Their ancestors once organized the Great Boot Census of 1649, an ambitious and deeply unnecessary attempt to count every shoe in the region. They got as far as moderately accurate before giving up and throwing a party. You recall the tale as you step into the hollow and call out softly, "Oyez, feet accounted for. It's all satisfied. Laces honored. May no one stub a toe this night." A soft laugh filters down from an open window. Someone appreciated that one. That you wind your way uphill now, toward the older houses with stone lions and laundry lines strung like bunting across alleys. Here, the streets are named after professions long vanished. Waddlewright Lane, Scribbler's Close, Spooner's Way. You pass Spooner's and almost trip on an actual spoon. You pick it up. It's engraved with a daisy and a faint inscription, "For stirring joy." You leave it on a doorstep. The rooftops here are steep and mossy, like polite witches' hats. A cat perches on one, watching you pass with the faint disapproval of someone who suspects you forgot to mention the recycling schedule. You tip your hat to it anyway. Your bell chimes one last time, soft and sweet. "Oyez," you whisper. "Let these streets remember laughter. Let the eaves keep secrets. Let the morning wait its turn." And with that, you finally round the bend to your own small doorstep. The latch clicks as you open the door, and the warm scent of books and barley tea welcomes you home. You step inside your cottage and close the door gently behind you, careful not to let the latch clang. It's not that anyone would complain. Your nearest neighbor is a kindly widow with no particular interest in noise, but silence feels sacred after a circuit, like you're stepping off stage and into your dressing room. If your dressing room were stocked primarily with jam jars and lopsided furniture, the hearth glows low. Embers like sleepy fireflies nestle beneath a log you swore had burned out hours ago. You hang your bell on the carved wooden hook by the door. It's shaped like a goat, because of course it is. You never did ask why the carpenter insisted on that motif. He claimed it spoke to the soul of town life. You suspected he just had leftover goat templates. You peel off your outer coat, heavy with the accumulated whispers of 100 cobbled corners, and hang it beside the bell. Beneath, your waistcoat is slightly askew. One of the brass buttons bears the profile of a very surprised-looking pigeon. You keep meaning to replace it. You never do. The kettle rests on the stove, already warm from your early preparations. You add water, settle it over the flame, and let the sound of heating begin its gentle punctuation in the background. As you prepare your tea, barley with a hint of chamomile and licorice root, you glance toward the narrow shelf above your writing desk. It holds the town's unofficial crier log, dozens of notebooks, some leather-bound, some patched with string and good intentions. You don't keep official minutes. That's what the clerk's for. But your own annotations, the soft side of the record, live here. You run your fingers across the spines. Day of fog so dense it giggled. Unexpected goat parade, unsanctioned. Mrs. Thistle claims rain clouds stole her soap. Each entry reads like a bedtime story scribbled into history's margins. You choose one notebook and open it to a blank page. The quill squeaks slightly as you dip it into the ink pot, which is running low but not desperate yet. You write, in careful script, 3rd day of the bright moon. Cheese redistribution successful. No poultry-related incidents. New child declared desire to join the ranks. Probable future bard. Cat judgment ongoing. You pause, then underline cheese redistribution for effect. As you blow gently on the ink to dry it, the kettle whistles. You rise, pour the tea, and carry it to the window seat. Your favorite place to let the evening finish settling into you. The window overlooks a corner of Lantern Row, just enough to see the glimmering trail of the final lights winking out one by one. You sip your tea, which tastes faintly of libraries and patience. In the stillness, you consider the night's events. Nothing explosive, nothing dramatic. Just the careful braiding of ordinary things into a cord of calm. That's what the job is, really. Reassuring the town that someone's still looking out, even if what you're looking at is an overly ambitious beetroot display. You close your eyes briefly and let your mind wander. Not far, just enough to feel where the town presses gently on your awareness, like a cat leaning against your ankle. You remember tonight's child, voice clear and certain, declaring boot frogs with the confidence of a prophet. You think of the cheese with a monocle, of the still unresolved question of how the fishmonger's cart moved uphill without assistance last Thursday. Historians still argue whether supernatural mischief or unusually dedicated eels were involved. You let yourself chuckle softly. Your mind drifts to the history of criers in this town. Not the grand, trumpet-blowing ones from capital cities, but the everyday folk who wore sturdy boots and remembered everyone's dog by name. There was Alma the Tall, who once fell into a well mid-announcement and still finished the proclamation with only minor distortion. Before her came Duncan of the 7 Bells, who wore a different bell depending on the message. Joy, sorrow, weather, weddings, misplaced livestock, dramatic apologies, and mysterious shrieking, used sparingly. Their names line the margins of town history, not always celebrated, but always steady. You think about what it means to hold a place together with nothing more than voice and consistency. To be the soft chime in the background reminding everyone, yes, this is still home. From your window, you spot a candle flickering out. Then another, and another. You whisper to the empty room, not needing the bell for this part. As sleep finds you now. The streets are quiet. The roofs hold steady. Tomorrow will come with fresh pastry and new confusion. For now, let all be still. You imagine your voice carried by the wind, brushing across the thatched rooftops, curling down chimneys, settling into boots left by the door. The candle beside your window gutters low. You don't move to replace it. Instead, you reach once more for the crier's log and write. Town asleep by 10. Wind favorable. Bell content. You close the book gently and set it aside. Your bed, small, soft, made from questionable goose feathers, is already half warmed by the ember's fading heat. You slip beneath the coverlet, which still smells faintly of lavender and old ink. The bell on the wall sways slightly in a breeze you can't quite feel, and as your eyes drift closed, you dream not of parades or pronouncements, but of small children shouting Oyez into puddles and getting splashback as their only reply. The town is still, and so are you. You wake before dawn, not because you must, but because the town breathes differently in the dark. There's a hush that isn't silence, more like a collective holding of breath, as if even the cobblestones are waiting to see what the day will bring. You sit up slowly, blanket sliding to your waist, and listen. No bells yet. No clatter of milk pails or murmurs of early bread bakers. Just the rustle of a sparrow considering whether it's worth the effort of flying. You stretch with the creak of someone who's memorized the sounds their joints make. The floorboards beneath your feet are cool but familiar, each one groaning a morning greeting. You cross to the window and lift the curtain just enough to peek at the slate-colored sky. The first light paints the rooftops in tones of pewter. A soft mist coils between chimneys and alleyways, refusing to retreat until it's properly begged. You'll get to that. After dressing, woolen trousers, slightly rumpled tunic, waistcoat with the pigeon button, still there, still startled. You clip your crier's badge to your belt and don your cloak. Not the formal one, just the everyday version with a faint ink stain and a frayed hem that whispers of long walks and unspilled secrets. Today is market day. You can tell without even stepping outside. It's in the way the air hums with potential haggling, the way birds seem to perch with more purpose, as if preparing for pastry crumbs and dramatic cabbage-based incidents. You pour the last of the barley tea into your travel flask, tuck the small notebook into your coat pocket, and gently unhook the bell from its goat-shaped post. It's still cool from the night air. Oyez, you murmur to the room. Let the day begin, but not too loudly. You step out into the blue dawn. Market day is not what it once was. Not a sprawling affair with traveling minstrels and hay rides, and someone selling suspicious meat pies from a cart held together with twine and charm. But it still has its own rhythm. A pulse. You make your way toward Market Square, passing houses that are just beginning to rouse. Curtains twitch. A window opens. Somewhere, a dog sneezes with the force of a trumpet. As you walk, your footsteps echo softly in the still sleepy town. The cobbler's window glows faintly. They always start early, murmuring encouragements to leather and thread. You tap the bell gently and say, "Oyez, may your heels be even and your customers patient." Further on, the baker's door is cracked open, warm air spilling out with the scent of cinnamon and yeast. You hesitate, then reach into your coat and pull out a crumpled note you meant to deliver yesterday. It's from the librarian, requesting 2 more sourdoughs and 1 apology for her cousin, who called scones bread that gave up. You slide it through the door with a quiet, "Oyez, consider this a peace offering. Please don't skimp on the crust." As the sky lightens, more signs of life appear. A cart rumbles over the stones, pulled by a mule who looks profoundly unamused. The driver waves, face still tucked inside a scarf, and you nod in return. Market Square arrives like a theater stage before the curtain goes up. Stalls are half-raised, bolts of cloth unfurling like sleepy flags. Crates of apples shift under burlap covers, and someone somewhere is already arguing about the placement of a turnip pyramid. You circle slowly, offering quiet greetings to the vendors you've known for years. Mr. Plym the beekeeper, who insists his bees respond to compliments. Lady Lark, who sells buttons with no pears and great enthusiasm. And young Sana, who always tries to sell you pickled eggs for your voice, probably. You thank them all, offer soft encouragements, and record small updates in your notebook. Point one stall catches your eye. It's new. Unfamiliar wood, a sign scrawled in uneven charcoal. Solutions for small problems. You approach. The vendor is a tall figure in a floppy hat, arranging jars filled with mysterious substances. Some look like jam, others more like regret. They smile as you near. "You look like someone who announces things," they say. You nod. "I announce. I observe. I occasionally interpret cheese incidents." They offer you a jar labeled "Courage for First Conversations." Inside, small pink cubes that may or may not be candied ginger. Free sample? You consider. Only if it doesn't replace my sarcasm. They grin. It amplifies it, I think. You take one, pocket it, and move on. As the stalls settle into their proper shapes and arguments over root vegetables begin in earnest, you step onto the central platform. Just a wide flat stone near the well, worn by centuries of announcements and nervous speeches. You raise the bell. It's a gentle chime today, not demanding but affectionate. A sound that says, "Here we go again, friends." "Oh yes, oh yes." You call out, your voice smooth from tea and habit. Let it be known that market day has begun. Apples are honest, buttons are untamed, and the bees are, as always, accepting compliments. A light ripple of chuckles, a few nods. Someone tosses a dried flower onto the platform, a silent thank you. You continue, whether to be determined. Clouds appear uncommitted. Let joy be traded alongside cabbages. The crowd disperses, Moving into the flow of the day, you step down and take a slow lap of the square, keeping your bell ready, not for emergencies, but for moments that ask for punctuation. The accidental poetry of a spilled spice cart. The reunion of two elderly sisters over a single carrot. The first note of a fiddle warming up in the corner. You pass the solutions for small problems stall again. The vendor offers a wave and a wink. You ring the bell once, softly. Oyez, you say, more to yourself than anyone else. Let small problems know they are seen. And then you disappear gently back into the crowd, where even the town crier becomes part of the background. A hum, a thread, a presence more felt than seen. Mid-morning leans into market day like a cat stretching into a sunbeam. The square is now properly awake, filled with the smells of fresh-baked loaves and fried pastries, the occasional complaint about turnip prices, and that ever-present hum of cheerful bartering that only comes when the weather's decent and the gossip is particularly juicy. You move quietly through the bustle, bell tucked into your cloak for now. It's not needed. The rhythm of the day has found its pace, and you, as always, drift along its edges like punctuation. Someone calls your name, half greeting, half inquiry, and you glance over your shoulder to find Edgar, the town's semi-official lamplighter and fully official enthusiast of conspiracy theories involving squirrels. Crier, he shouts, hurrying over with a bundle of kindling and a face that suggests he's uncovered something of profound, if questionable, importance. You're needed. You raise an eyebrow. A proclamation? A duel? Another cheese-based vendetta? No, he says, panting slightly. This is big. It's the bell. Not your bell, the other one. Oh, the other bell. You know it well. Hanging from the oldest tree in the village square, the other bell is more artifact than instrument. Rusted iron, half swallowed by ivy, it hasn't rung in decades. No one remembers who last used it or why, but everyone agrees it should only be rung in moments of truly momentous occasion, or possibly by accident during overly enthusiastic tree climbing. What about it? You ask, already walking with him toward the tree. It's missing, Edgar says, voice lowered. You stop. What do you mean, missing? Bells don't just wander off. That's what I said, he nods, delighted to be agreed with. But it's gone. And there's a note. You arrive at the tree. Sure enough, where the bell once hung there is now an empty hook, still swaying slightly in the breeze like it's wondering what it lost. Below, nailed neatly to the trunk, is a scrap of parchment. You squint at it. Dear town. It reads, in carefully printed letters, I've borrowed the bell. It will return when it's remembered. Sincerely, a believer. You and Edgar stare at the note. I don't know what that means, Edgar says. Neither do I, you reply. Which means it probably means something very important or absolutely nothing. You take out your notebook and jot it down. Note stolen bell. Note mysterious note. Possible prank. Possible pilgrimage. Bell not known for its ambition. You pull your bell from your cloak and give it a single soft chime. Not an alert, just a nudge. Around the square, a few heads turn toward you with mild interest. Oyez, you call gently. If anyone has seen a large, rusted bell possibly fleeing existential crisis, please inform the crier. A light laugh ripples through the square. Several people glance toward the tree, now bell-less but still somehow dignified. You glance at Edgar. Well, you say, if nothing else, at least we'll have a new chapter for the archive. He nods gravely. Do you think the squirrels took it? I think, you say, that if they did, they'll be asking for acorn rights next. You continue your rounds at the far end of the square, tucked between the flower seller and the traveling weaver, sits a stall you didn't expect to see. The town's Historical Curiosities Society has emerged from its usual dusty lair with a display of relics no one asked for, and everyone is secretly delighted by. You pause to admire the 17th century boot of dubious authenticity, a cracked leather monstrosity said to have belonged to someone either very important or extremely confused. There's also a spoon allegedly used by a pirate who had no teeth, and a replica of the first street lamp ever installed in town, still slightly tilted from the time it was knocked over by a goat wearing spectacles. As you admire the chaos, Miss Tyndall, the society's self-declared archivist, approaches with the air of someone who has definitely misfiled something important but refuses to admit it. Crier, she says. We were wondering if you might record a formal notice regarding our upcoming lecture on the uses of lint throughout the ages. You blink. Is this real lint? Or metaphorical? Primarily physical, she replies, but with strong metaphorical implications. You nod slowly. I'll consider it an urgent matter. She beams and hands you a tiny scroll, written in what appears to be crayon. As you tuck the notice into your pocket, you glance once more around the square that it's almost noon now. The sun hangs high, and the market is in full swing. Somewhere, a child laughs mid-chase, knocking into a stack of onions that topples with theatrical flair. The crowd applauds. You pause, lifting the bell once more, and chime. Oyez, you call. Let it be known, onions are braver than they appear. There's a cheer. The onion seller takes a bow to as you step aside, letting the tide of the day swell around you. You feel the hum again, the gentle thrum of the town moving as one peculiar, comforting beast. Each person playing their part, each stall its own small story. And you, the crier, not above it or beside it, but woven through, bell and all, you breathe deep. The air tastes of cinnamon and possibility, and somewhere, you swear you hear a rusted bell ringing in the distance. You follow the sound, or at least the memory of the sound. Rusted bells don't ring often, and certainly not in a tone that crisp. But something in your bones says it was real. Maybe, probably, possibly. You head east, past the butcher's stall, where someone's debating the ethics of sausage geometry. You nod to old Margot, who's sorting feathers with scientific precision, past the alley with the graffiti owl that seems to wink when the light hits it right. You know where you're going. At least, you think you do. The path curves away from Market Square toward a copse of trees that straddle the edge of the village. There, nestled like a forgotten thought, is the parish bell house, no longer used for services, long since deconsecrated, and now the unofficial storage for everything the town has no proper category for. You haven't been here in weeks. As you reach the door, paint peeling, hinges sulking, you pause. A soft rustle behind you. Not threatening. More amused. You turn. There's no one there, but a small note has been wedged into the doorframe. Not nailed this time, just tucked like a secret. For the crier. It reads in the same handwriting. We're not gone. Just playing. You sigh? Not out of frustration, but the kind of sigh that implies a long story has just gotten longer. You pocket the note. Inside the bell house, the air smells of wood, dust, and centuries-old candle wax. Sunlight filters through high windows, revealing floating specks that dance like bored fairies. Shelves groan with scrolls, ledgers, unlabeled jars, and a modest but determined infestation of paper mites. The bell, your bell, isn't here, of course. But the room feels alert. You make your way to the center table, where a map of the town, rendered in exquisite ink, lies waiting. You haven't looked at it in ages. The ink's faded in places, but someone's been here recently. New marks, circles, symbols. Point one, in particular, catches your eye. A spiral drawn just beyond the edge of the town, near the old sheep trails. Marked where sound sleeps. You tap it gently. A rustle behind you. You turn again, still nothing, and then a creak. Floorboard? Bench. Ancient ghost finally learning to dance. Nope, just the bell. Or rather, a bell. From the shelf, a small brass handbell topples over without assistance. You catch it before it hits the ground. It's not yours. It's too delicate, too ceremonial. But the handle is warm. You give it a test ring. Ting. Not a proclamation, but a question. Oyez, you whisper. Who's playing games with rusted things? No answer. Unless you count the sudden breeze through the open window and the faint smell of oranges, completely out of season. You place the ceremonial bell on the table and mark the spiral on your own small notebook. Your rounds resume. Back in town, the day has shifted into its golden stretch, the hours between the peak of sunlight and the moment when everyone realizes they forgot to buy eggs. You find yourself at the edge of South Row, where the homes are older, slanted from time and fond neglect. Here lives the retired candle maker, a woman known only as Gannett, who claims to have once met a ghost and taught it how to knit. She waves you in. No news, she says, just tea. And one complaint about the moon. You sit, cup warming your hands, as she describes how last night's moon was too smug. In her opinion, and someone ought to tell it. You promise to consider including a lunar reprimand in tomorrow's announcements. I like your work, she says, squinting. You make the town feel like it remembers itself. You blink. That's possibly the highest compliment you've ever received. Even if it's nestled among wild tales of moody wax and suspicious shadows on your way out. She hands you a tiny jar. For luck, she says. Or confusion. Could go either way. You accept it gratefully. You stop at the green just before the schoolhouse, where the children are playing their favorite game, Town Crier. One child holds a stick as a bell, another wears a mop as a wig. They are loudly announcing made-up facts like, the Queen has declared pudding illegal, and tomorrow will be entirely made of ducks. You clap politely and award them all honorary status as assistant criers, level 1. The mop wearer salutes, as the shadows grow longer. You make your final loop through the town, stopping at doorways and corners where notices need updating. You read the newest from the herbalist. Oyez, you murmur. New teas available. Sleep. Maybe. Possibly alert. And too much sage, sorry. You attach a slip from the blacksmith. Oyez. One boot found. Looking for its twin or a romantic partner. And, finally, you reach the stone bench near the crossroads. The informal notice board, conversation post, and occasional sandwich trading post. There, pinned to the backrest, is another note. You read it slowly. Dear Crier, you're very good at this. We're listening. Signed, once again, a believer. You sit for a while, watching the sun slip behind the rooftops. The bell remains missing. But in its absence, something else is ringing. Not a sound, but a presence. A soft echo of curiosity that winds through the streets like a breeze that knows secrets. You give your bell one last gentle chime. Oyez, you say to the evening air, we are not lost. Just wondering. And with that, you rise, cloak rustling, and walk into the dusk, still listening, still watching, still ringing the occasional note into a town that never quite stops speaking back. Dusk thickens like honey left on a cool windowsill. You walk the long way home, not out of forgetfulness, but because some routes only make sense when taken in twilight. Streets blur at the edges, windows glow with amber light, and the soft murmur of dinner conversations and clinking utensils drifts like music from open shutters. You aren't done working. A town crier's day doesn't end with the sun. It simply changes tone. Evening duties are subtler. Fewer declarations, more listening. The bell chimes less frequently, but more meaningfully. People want reminders now, not alerts. Comfort, not calls to action. You reach the bridge at Lower Brook. It's not on any official map, technically just a well-worn plank with personality. But tonight, it hosts something unusual, a lantern, flickering merrily, with a note tucked underneath it. You pause. Your notebook's already in hand before you've read a word that it's not the same handwriting as the believer notes. This one is shaky, probably elderly, and smells faintly of lavender oil. Crier, could you remind us, gently, to let the firewood rest inside tonight? The frost's been coming in early, and my knees aren't what they were in 47. You smile, tuck the note away, and make a mental note to swing by the widow Penrose's cottage later. Not every proclamation needs to be public. Still, it gives you an idea. You climb up to the high path above the commons, where the sound carries farther. You chime the bell, not loud, just firm. Oyez, you call into the cooling air. This is your kindly reminder from an old friend. If you've left your firewood outdoors tonight, now's the time to tuck it in. The frost may visit while you sleep, and even logs deserve warmth. A few chuckles float up from cottages below. One or two figures emerge, shuffle to their yards, and begin the slow process of hauling in split oak. A couple of lanterns wink back at you in appreciation. You move on, passing the baker's house, where someone inside is singing something half-remembered from childhood. Then by the potter's, whose kiln glow casts strange but comforting shadows across the hedge. You eventually reach the lamplighter's post. Edgar, unsurprisingly, is already there, mid-monologue about a suspicious hedgehog he claims to have seen wearing a scarf. It looked too warm, he insists, as you approach. Unnaturally warm. You nod solemnly, probably smuggling cinnamon. Exactly, he whispers. Together, you light the last few lamps. The ritual's never written down, but it's always the same. A nod, a spark, and a shared silence as the flame flutters to life. You give the bell another soft chime. It's not necessary, but it feels right. Oyez, you murmur. Light travels best when shared. Edgar looks pleased. That'll confuse the hedgehog. Your route now takes you back past the blacksmith's forge, now dark. But there's a note pinned to the outer door, written in familiar, looping handwriting. Not the believers, not Widow Penrose's. It's from young Effie, the apprentice candlemaker. Crier, I heard about the missing bell. I didn't take it, but I made this in case it helps. Attached to the note is a tiny beeswax replica of the missing bell, impossibly detailed. Even the rust marks are painted in with powdered clove. It fits perfectly in your palm. You hold it to your ear. Silence, of course, but still, something about it makes you feel seen. You place it gently in your satchel, nestled beside your notebook. Farther along, a stone wall bears a bit of chalk graffiti, a smiley face, an arrow pointing upward, and the word listen. You do crickets. A breeze. The gentle creak of wooden beams settling into night. And, far off in the hills, a bell. Again, not a town bell, not any you recognize, but deeper, echoing, as if the land itself has decided to chime in. You pause. Historians still argue whether these distant sounds were real bells, shepherds marking territory, perhaps, or ancient monastic orders keeping time, or simply the product of wind through hollows and hopeful ears. You take the more comforting view. Back near the square, you stop outside the tavern. Not to go in. You've got no thirst tonight, but to check the evening's wall of requests. It's mostly the usual. Tell my wife I did in fact fix the fence, though it wasn't broken. Please remind Edwin that tomorrow is soup day and that he promised not to complain this time. And, scrawled in the corner, barely visible, Crier, do you ever sleep? You smiled at no response. That one's not for announcing. Across the square, the historical curiosities stall has packed up, but a chalkboard remains leaning against a barrel. Someone's added a final note in curly letters. If the bell returns, we'll throw it a welcome home party. BYOB, bring your own bong. You snort softly. A good joke at the end of a long day is like a properly banked fire. Unexpected, warm, and just enough to carry you into sleep. Your last stop is the hill above the mill. No reason, really. It just offers the best view of the whole town. A sleepy patchwork of light, smoke, and life. You sit. Below you, the town exhales. Somewhere, someone sneezes. A dog barks once, decides it wasn't worth it, and lies down again. Stars peek out above the rooftops like curious cats. You chime your bell one final time, soft as possible. Oyez, you whisper. We made it through another day. You can rest now. And you do, too. Sleep, like any loyal companion, waits for you just beyond the hedgerow of your thoughts. But you've got one more errand. The kind of errand that doesn't make it into the public proclamations, but matters all the same. It starts with a dream someone told you once. A dream about a staircase that only appears when no one's looking for it. The teller had sworn it was real, claimed they found it near the north field and that it led to nowhere in particular, but made them feel politely unsettled. You had smiled, nodded, filed it away. Now, months later, you're standing near that same north field. No dream staircase in sight, of course, but there is something strange here tonight. A patch of wild grass flattened into a perfect spiral. Not large, not dramatic, but intentional. You kneel beside it. Someone, or something, has laid out small stones in a ring around the spiral. Each stone has a symbol carved into it. Not language, per se, more like musical notation. Abstract, gentle curves, dots, and spirals point. One stone has been painted blue. You pocket it before you can talk yourself out of it. Not theft, just borrowing. The kind of borrowing the town seems to understand without speaking. Back on the path, the stars have fully taken up residence in the sky. There's Orion, leaning dramatically. Cassiopeia, reclining like a slightly vain ant. And, if you squint, there's the bell, a constellation you invented years ago for a child who insisted every shape could be found in the stars. You once told her the bell only rings when someone tells the truth by accident. She believed you completely. You're halfway back to the village when you hear footsteps behind you. Not close. Not fast. But steady. Measured. You stop. They stop. You start again. They don't. You turn. In a one. But on the path behind you, neatly arranged in a line, are 3 white pebbles. each one smaller than the last. You get the sense you're being left clues, though whether they're for solving or simply appreciating, you're not sure. Either way, it feels like play, respectful mischief. Like someone out there enjoys the idea of nudging you gently off course. You don't mind. Back in town, the lights have dimmed further. The tavern has gone quiet, except for one final hiccup of laughter, followed by the unmistakable thunk of someone discovering gravity the hard way. A chair perhaps. Hopefully not a clarinet again. You pause outside the post office, where the town's anonymous confession box resides. It's officially for suggestions, improvements, and emotional clarity. But mostly people drop in odd memories, unmailed letters, and the occasional recipe. You check it, not as a snoop, but as a caretaker. Tonight's entries include, I still miss the smell of the old bread oven. Sorry I took the purple gloves from the laundrette. They felt like they were mine. Tell the moon I forgive it. I know it wasn't personal. You fold them up, gently, and replace them. You decide to take the long curve around the bakery, recently closed, but the warmth of earlier loaves still hangs in the air. The scent mixes with chimney smoke and the faint perfume of wildflowers from someone's nighttime window box. It hits you then. This town, with all its strangeness and softness, isn't just where you work, it's where the stories come to rest. And, occasionally, where they rise again. You turn on a mapmaker's lane, named not for any actual cartography, but for a man who once claimed to be able to draw maps of dreams. He was either a genius or deeply confused, but he sold quite a few. You pause at the corner where his old stall used to be. Someone's lit a candle in a glass jar there. No note. Just light. A quiet thank you. Maybe. You keep walking, passing a cat who seems to be doing some light surveillance from atop a barrel. It blinks at you like it knows a secret. Possibly about the bell. Possibly about your socks. You nod in solidarity and continue. Past the weavers, the midwives, the mural that changes ever so slightly when no one's watching. You stop when you reach the small wooden plaque near the square. Barely anyone notices it. It reads, Here stood the first bell of Wintelon Dell. It rang itself once, then refused to explain why. You love that plaque. You tap it fondly, then head home. Your door greets you with the familiar sigh of old hinges. Inside, warmth, a tidy hearth, and a chair that knows the shape of your back a little too well. You shed your cloak, place your bell gently in its cradle, and hang your satchel on its peg. You sit. Outside, the wind shifts, and you hear it again. A bell. Far away. You don't need to respond. Not tonight. You just listen and smile. There's a kind of hush that arrives just before proper sleep takes over a town. Not silence, exactly, but an orchestration of quiet things. The snap of an old beam contracting in the roof, the almost sound of candle wax cooling, and the slow, deliberate turn of pages from readers who swore they'd stop at the next chapter an hour ago. That you're one of those readers now. Except your book isn't bound in leather or nestled with bookmarks. It's tonight itself. And tonight, it has one more chapter for you, because a letter has arrived, slipped under your door, so gently you didn't hear it. The paper is thick, the fold crisp, and the wax seal unbroken. A red wax seal shaped like, of course, a bell. You turn it over. No address. No sender. Just the words. You're almost there. You sit back down. Let it rest in your hands. Then, gently, you open it. The handwriting is flourished, old-fashioned, but unmistakably modern in attitude. A mix of reverence and teasing, like someone who knows their Shakespeare but still makes puns during funerals. Dear Crier, if that is your true profession, you've walked these streets a long time. Longer, perhaps, than even you remember. We've watched you ring the news, soothe the town, and somehow maintain a sense of humor despite occasional attacks by geese and suspicious jam makers. We thought at time you were invited to the bellkeeper's circle. We meet only when it matters. Which, conveniently, is tonight. You blinked. There's a small map at the bottom of the letter, drawn in quick, inkshire lines. It leads to a place marked only as the Hollow Bell. You've never heard of it, but you already have your boots back on before you've quite finished reading. Outside, the night is thicker now. Not oppressive, just more definite. As if the world has pulled up its covers. You follow the map. Left at the hedge where the blackbirds swear at mailmen. Past the second elm that thinks it's taller than it is. Then a sharp right. Just after the well that used to grant only sarcastic wishes. And then, Nothing that inno-doored inno-bell. Just a clearing. You step into it. The grass here is shorter, like it's been trodden by feet that don't leave prints. At the center stands a single stone post, about waist height, and on top of it, a bell, but it's not like your town bell. This one is cracked down the center, cleanly, surgically, but still whole. As if someone tried to break it and it politely refused. You reach out, touch it. It's warm. Then you hear them. Voices. Not all at once, but one after another, like raindrops. Whispering names, dates, street corners, announcements, forgotten jokes. Oyez after Oyez, echoing backward through time. The bellkeeper's circle, you realize, isn't a place. It's a memory, a tradition. Everyone who's ever rung the bell and meant it. Every crier who walked through fog, storm, and festival. They live here, in this moment. In this sound, historians still debate the existence of such communal memory sites. Some dismiss them as romantic nonsense. Others insist entire cities once passed knowledge this way, through places and objects infused with intention. You prefer the latter theory. You sit on the grass beside the bell. You don't ring it. It's not that kind of night. Instead, you whisper something into the hollow crack. Your name, your thanks, and a hope that someone else, someday, will find it too. The wind rustles in approval. You head home differently than you came. Not faster, just deeper, somehow. As if the path has widened to include more of you. Back in town, you pass a window with a light still on. Inside, a child is being read to by someone who could be a parent, a grandparent, or a very patient neighbor. You catch just a snippet of the story. Something about a prince who tries to bake a cake using only spoons. It's going about as well as you'd expect. You grin. Your house welcomes you back like a loyal cat. Slightly aloof, but warm. The satchel goes back on its peg. The boots land just shy of their usual resting place, too tired to aim. And then, as you pull the covers up, you hear it again. The bell. This time, you're certain it's in your own house. You sit up. There, hanging by your window, where the morning light will hit it first, is the tiny beeswax bell Effie made. It's swinging gently. But there's no breeze. You don't investigate. You just lie back, smiling. Let the sound settle over you. Let it become your lullaby. And for the first time in a long time, you don't feel the need to listen for the next bell. You know it will come when it's ready, and so will you. You wake before the sun. Not from a bell, not from a cry, but from the particular stillness that only comes right before first light. A moment when the whole town seems to hold its breath in anticipation of a day not yet decided. Your window is rimmed in dew. Outside, the grass glistens with that faint silvery sheen that always makes you think of old lace. The beeswax bell, still hanging, still unmoving, now catches the blush of a pre-dawn sky. You stretch. Every muscle quietly protests, like an overused choir refusing to rehearse one more psalm. But you coax them into cooperation with a hot cloth and a few muttered promises of later naps. Your robe is soft with age. Your slippers, bless them, still remember the shape of your foot. As you make your way to the hearth, a single ember still glows from the fire you forgot to bank. You reward its diligence with new logs and a whispered thank you. And then you hear it. A knock. Soft, almost shy, and definitely too early for social visits. You open the door. In a one dot, but on the step, a bundle wrapped in wool. You lift it carefully. Inside is a scroll, a plum scone, still warm, and a small silver coin stamped with the image of a sleeping fox. The scroll reads, "You're doing just fine. See you at the fair." You blink. The fair you'd nearly forgotten. It's not a big affair, more a glorified village picnic with delusions of grandeur. But every few years, the town puts on what they call the Bell Fair. A celebration of sound and silence, of voices and echoes that you're usually asked to open it. Not officially, of course, but by tradition. Your proclamation is the signal that the jam judging may commence, the three-legged race may begin, and the mayor may put on the ceremonial socks, striped, questionably clean, and knitted in 1887. You eat the scone in 3 reverent bites, then dress. Your ceremonial bell polishing cloth is missing again, last seen being turned into a cape by Effie, who insisted it gave her power of announcements. You make do with a napkin and a sprig of mint. Outside, the town is stirring. Stalls unfold like sleepy birds stretching their wings. Bunting appears on windows. A boy chases a runaway wheel of cheese down the slope by the schoolhouse, shouting apologies to no one in particular. You make your way to the square. Along the way, people nod, wave, or offer quiet morning crier greetings, as though you're some kind of benign ghost they've agreed not to be startled by. One old woman presses a daisy into your hand and says, "You've got bellkeeper hands." You don't ask what that means. You accept it. The square is already humming. Musicians tuning their instruments with the seriousness of surgeons. Children daring one another to steal a ribbon from the mayor's hat. A dog dressed as a knight. Possibly by choice. You step up to the old stone plinth in the center. It's cracked, sun-bleached, and slightly wonky. But it's yours. You raise your bell. Let the sunlight hit it just right. Then ring it once. Clear. Gentle. Final. A sound that belongs not just to this day, but to every version of this town that has ever existed. Every morning bell, every warning toll, every dinner chime, every joyful clang of a marriage long past. The square stills, then bursts into life. Booths open. Laughter rises. Someone trips over a ferret. All is well. You're ushered, somewhat against your will, toward the jam tent. A man in a waistcoat covered in grape emblems insists you must judge at least 3 conserves before noon. It's the law, he adds, handing you a spoon. Somewhere nearby, a brass band launches into a spirited version of a folk tune that may or may not be about sheep hygiene. You do not inquire. Children dart between legs like determined moths. A group of teenagers in dramatic cloaks recite poetry from atop a cart labeled theatrical potatoes. A goat escapes. Twice that you're given a ribbon for most enduring facial expression during marmalade sampling. You wear it proudly. As afternoon tips toward evening, you find yourself beside the quiet tent. It's the newest addition to the fair, a canvas space for those who prefer their joy whispered. Inside, people sit with books, with embroidery, with closed eyes and hands linked. A boy hums a lullaby to a doll with one missing ear. Someone offers you tea. You accept. There's a girl writing in a notebook. You glance at the page that she's listing sounds she wants to remember. Grandfather's nose whistle snow on that metal roof, the whoop of a skipping rope mid-spin mister. Crindle's laugh after 3 cups of cider. You add 1. Bell, cracked, never broken. She looks up, smiles, approves. Outside, the sun begins to dip. Lanterns flicker to life, strung between rooftops like captured fireflies. A slow waltz begins in the square, dancers moving like ships on a gentle tide. You don't dance, but you watch, and in that moment, the fair becomes something else. Not an event, but a spell. A communal enchantment of memory and promise. Historians still argue whether these kinds of gatherings shape culture or merely reflect it. Whether the bell is a tool of power or poetry. Whether traditions like yours are quaint relics or vital threads. You sip your tea. Let them argue. The night is too soft for debates, too round for certainty. You walk home beneath lanterns, carrying a jar of prize-winning gooseberry preserve and a pocket full of found buttons. When you reach your door, the beeswax bell rings once in a wind. Just acknowledgement. You bow and go inside. You wake to rain. Not a dramatic downpour, no thunder, no wind tossing shutters about, but a patient, curtain-like drizzle. The kind that turns the entire world into a watercolor painting and makes stones shine like polished secrets. You listen for a moment. It's the sort of rain that encourages bread baking, floor sweeping, and letter writing. Not chores, exactly, more like rituals. The kinds of small acts that tether you to the day without demanding anything loud. Your knees creak as you sit up. The beeswax bell is still by the window, perfectly still. But you could swear it glistens a bit more today. Maybe the rain. Maybe not. You pull your blanket around your shoulders and shuffle to the hearth. There's the scent of old smoke and rosemary. A pot of water you left to soak now hosts an ambitious fern. You nod approvingly. Life finds its way. On the mantle, where you keep oddments, is your ledger. Not for debts or declarations. This one's personal. A hand-bound book where you've written every notice you've ever delivered that wasn't strictly required. You open to a random page. To the young woman on the blue roof. Yes, your cat came home. Reminder, today is soup weather. Act accordingly. Sir Walden has announced a new mustache. Town impact, minimal. Each entry is like a pebble dropped into a still pond. You don't know where the ripples end, but you like imagining. Historians rarely record these moments. They focus on treaties, dates, grand revolts. But your favorite moments are the quiet ones, the neighborly notes, the failed kite festival, the one Tuesday everyone wore the same shade of green and no one noticed. You begin a new page. Rain is falling. Bread is rising. Hearts are soft. Proceed gently. You underline gently. Outside, the cobbles glisten like old coins. The downspout burbles in a language only metal knows. You decide it's a good day for boots and errands. You take the long way to the baker's. The market stalls are half shuttered, but not abandoned. Old Mags has her cart of apples, some dented, all charming. She offers you one, saying, "For your good words." You bite in. It's tart. Honest. The baker nods as you walk in. He's kneading dough with the kind of focus usually reserved for chess or courtship. The air smells of cinnamon and effort. "You here for the usual?" he asks. "No," you say. "Today calls for something round." He doesn't ask what that means. Just gives you a loaf shaped like a spiral and charges you 2 quiet smiles and a wink. On your way back, you stop by the postmaster as she's sorting letters by scent. "Lavender," she mutters. "Clove, tragedy, rosemary and ink, poetry or passive aggression." You ask if anything's come for you. She hands over a single envelope, sealed with wax the color of moss. Inside is a note. "You rang the right kind of bell. Keep ringing." No signature. No sender. Just that. You add it to your ledger. Back at home, you light a fire and let your bread warm by the hearth. It slowly becomes something between food and incantation. You sit at the window, watch the town blur and sharpen again with every gust of mist. You think about the crier who came before you. Old Tom Lynn, with the voice like gravel and a hat he swore was once blessed by a pigeon. He used to leave you notes in rhyme. "Be kind to the cows and the clocks. Never trust news from a fox. Announce with heart, not with flair, and never forget, brush your hair." You miss him. Historians still wonder about the succession of criers, how formal it was, who trained whom, whether there was ever an official guild. You know the truth is simpler. It passes from hand to hand when the bell feels ready. You didn't take over, the bell chose you. That night, you dream of sound. Not voices, not music, but the memory of sound. A field full of bells, all swaying in a wind made of stories. Some cracked, some whole, some made of bone or wax or lost songs. I in the center, a child stands. They look up at you and ask, "What happens when no one listens?" You bend down and whisper, "We ring anyway." They smile, and the field vanishes. You wake to quiet, but not silence. Outside, someone is laughing. A low chuckle, half asleep. Probably Mr. Greavy, who laughs in his sleep and once scared a raccoon out of a dream with it. The fire has died to a friendly pile of coals. You sit with your spiral loaf and your moss-sealed letter, and you wonder how many other bells are being rung at this moment, in towns you've never heard of, by people you'll never meet. And you hope, no, you trust, that they ring not just for warning or command, but for joy, for memory, for the sheer, ringing act of being heard.